The human exploration vessel Meridian drifted through the debris field in complete silence. Captain Daniel Pierce stood on the bridge, his knuckles white as he gripped the railing. Around him, his crew stared at their screens with expressions that ranged from horror to disbelief. "Captain, I'm picking up more bodies," said the scanner operator, a young man named Kyle Sanders. His voice shook slightly. "Thousands more. They're just floating out there." Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again. The view screen showed the remains of what had once been a thriving city on the planet below. Now it was nothing but scorched earth and collapsed buildings. Fires still burned in some sections, even though the attack had happened at least 2 weeks ago. "Take us into orbit," Daniel ordered quietly. "Launch survey drones. I want documentation of everything." His second-in-command, Commander Richard Hayes, stepped closer and lowered his voice. "Sir, maybe we should call this in first. Wait for orders." "We are calling it in," Daniel replied. "But I want evidence, real evidence, not just sensor readings that some politician can dismiss as technical errors." The Meridian entered a stable orbit around the planet. What they saw made even the most experienced crew members feel sick. This world had belonged to the Varani, a peaceful species known throughout the galaxy for their art and music. The Varani had never developed weapons beyond simple defensive systems. They believed in negotiation and finding common ground. Someone had decided that made them easy targets. "Captain, getting life signs," Kyle said suddenly, sitting up straighter. "Faint, but they're there, underground, in what looks like old mining tunnels." "How many?" 3 signatures. They're weak." Daniel didn't hesitate. "Richard, take a team down, medical personnel, security, and supplies. Find them and bring them up." "Yes, sir." While the rescue team prepared, Daniel walked to the communication station where Linda Hayes, his cultural documentation officer, and Richard's sister, was reviewing data. She had tears running down her face, but her hands moved steadily across her console, recording everything. "Linda," Daniel said gently. "I'm fine, Captain," she said, not looking up. "I'm just making sure we get this all documented. Every building, every body we can scan, every piece of evidence." "Good. That's good." Daniel put a hand on her shoulder briefly, then moved away. The rescue shuttle launched 20 minutes later. Daniel watched from the bridge as it descended through the atmosphere. The planet's surface was covered in ash. Entire forests had been burned. The ocean showed signs of chemical contamination. This hadn't been a military strike. This had been extermination. "Captain, we're getting a transmission," said the communications officer, a woman named Beth Morgan. "It's from the Galactic Council relay station. They're asking why we're here." "Tell them we responded to a distress signal," Daniel said. "Which is the truth. We picked up automated emergency beacons 3 days ago. They're saying this is Krell territory now and we should leave." Daniel's jaw tightened. "The Krell Empire." Of course. Everyone on the bridge knew about the Krell. They were a militaristic species that had been expanding aggressively for decades. The Galactic Council kept trying to negotiate with them, kept hoping diplomacy would work. Meanwhile, smaller species kept disappearing from the star maps. "Tell the Council we'll leave when we've completed our humanitarian mission," Daniel said. "We have survivors to rescue." 2 hours later, Richard's team returned with 3 Varani. The aliens were thin, dehydrated, and terrified. The medical team rushed them to the ship's hospital while Daniel made his way down to speak with them. The Varani were tall and slender, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. They normally moved with a grace that humans found beautiful to watch. These 3 could barely stand. The ship's doctor, a capable woman named Amy Chen, met Daniel outside the medical bay. "They'll survive," she said quietly, "physically at least. But, Captain, what they've been through, what they saw, I don't know if they'll ever really recover. I need to talk to them." "I know. They've been asking for whoever's in charge. I think they need to tell someone what happened." Daniel entered the medical bay. The 3 Varani sat together on one bed, holding each other's hands. The eldest, a male whose name translated to something like morning song, spoke for the group. "You are human," he said in heavily accented but understandable English. The Varani had always been good with languages. "Yes. I'm Captain Daniel Pierce. We came as soon as we received your distress signal." "Too late," Morning Song said softly. "Everyone is gone. My children, my mate, everyone. I'm so sorry." "Can you tell me what happened?" Morning Song closed his eyes. "The Krell came. They said our world was in their expansion zone. They gave us 1 day to evacuate. 1 day for an entire planet. Where could we go? We had some ships, but not enough for everyone. One of the other survivors, a young female, continued the story. We tried to negotiate. We offered to share the planet. We offered to pay tribute. We offered everything. They didn't want negotiation, Morning Song said, his voice becoming hollow. They wanted the planet empty. When the day ended and we were still here, they began bombing, city after city. Then they landed troops. They went building to building. They killed everyone they found. Old, young, it didn't matter. We hid in the old tunnels, the third survivor added. We heard the screaming.
It went on for days.
Daniel felt rage building in his chest, cold and controlled. Did you send word to the Galactic Council? Yes, before the communications arrays were destroyed. They said they would investigate. They said we should try to reach a peaceful resolution. Morning Song laughed bitterly. Peaceful resolution while our children were being murdered in the streets. Linda had followed Daniel down and was recording everything with her handheld device. How many of your people lived on this world? She asked gently. 800 million, Morning Song said. Now there are 3. The number hung in the air like a weight. 800 million living beings wiped out in a matter of weeks. Daniel straightened.
We're taking you to Earth. You'll be safe there.
And I promise you, the galaxy will know what happened here. Will it matter? The young female asked. The Krell are strong. The Council fears them. Nothing will change. Daniel met her eyes. It will matter. I'll make sure of it. After the Varani were settled and resting, Daniel returned to his ready room. He spent an hour compiling every piece of evidence, every scan, every image, every word of testimony. Then he composed a message to Earth Command. When he was done, he sat back in his chair and stared at the wall. He thought about his own children back on Earth, safe and happy. He thought about 800 million beings who had died while the galaxy's leadership talked about diplomatic channels and proper procedures. He sent the message. 3 days later, as the Meridian began its journey back to Earth, Daniel received a reply. It was short, just 3 lines from Secretary of Defense Gregory Mann. Evidence received and confirmed. Joint Chiefs briefed. Prepare for new orders. Daniel read it twice, then deleted it from his personal terminal. He knew what those 3 lines meant. Earth had been patient. Earth had followed the rules. Earth had believed in the Galactic Council system. That was about to end. The Galactic Council chamber was a massive circular room that floated in space, accessible only by shuttle. Representatives from 200 species sat in their designated sections, each with their own translation devices and voting consoles. The architecture was designed to inspire awe and respect for the democratic process. Ambassador Patricia Bloom had never felt less impressed by it. She stood at the speaker's platform in the center of the chamber, a simple podium that rose from the floor. Around her, in ascending tiers, sat the representatives of civilizations that spanned thousands of worlds. Some were humanoid, others were so alien that humans needed special equipment just to communicate with them. The evidence is undeniable, Patricia said, her voice calm but firm. The translation systems carried her words to every species in their own languages. The Krell Empire systematically exterminated 800 million Varani civilians. We have documented proof. Survivors who witnessed the genocide, sensor logs showing the bombardment of civilian population centers. She pressed a control on the podium. Holographic images appeared in the air above the chamber. Burned cities, bodies in the streets, children's toys scattered among rubble. Some representatives looked away. Others watched with what might have been sympathy or might have been nothing at all. It was hard to tell with alien faces. The Krell ambassador, a massive creature covered in thick armor-like scales, rose from his section. His name was something humans couldn't pronounce, so everyone called him Ambassador Zarn. The Varani were offered the opportunity to relocate, Zarn said, his voice like grinding rocks. They refused. The territory was needed for Krell expansion. We followed all proper protocols for territorial acquisition. Patricia felt her hands curl into fists.
She forced them to relax. Protocols?
You gave them 1 day to evacuate an entire planet. 800 million people. Where exactly were they supposed to go? Not our concern, Zarn replied. They chose to remain. They accepted the consequences. The consequence being genocide. The consequence being removal from Krell territory. A murmur ran through the chamber. Patricia saw what she expected to see. Some species looked genuinely disturbed. But most looked uncomfortable in a different way. They didn't like what the Krell had done, but they didn't want to get involved. The council speaker, An elderly member of the Tholian species activated his microphone. Ambassador Bloom, the Council shares your concern about this tragedy. However, military intervention in territorial disputes sets a dangerous precedent. We must consider the larger implications. The larger implication is that genocide is acceptable if you're strong enough, Patricia shot back. That is not what I said, but it's what you mean. How long have the Krell been expanding? How many species have disappeared from the border regions? And how many times has this council done anything more than express concern? Another representative stood. This one was from the Zypherian Collective, a powerful economic alliance.
Earth is young to galactic politics. You don't understand the complexities involved.
The Krell have strategic importance. They control key trade routes. Economic sanctions would harm everyone. So it's about money, Patricia said quietly. It's about stability, about the greater good. Patricia took a breath. This was the moment she'd been dreading and preparing for in equal measure. She'd received her instructions from Earth 3 hours ago. They were clear. The United Earth Government has authorized me to deliver the following statement, she said formally. The Krell Empire has 72 hours to surrender their military leadership for trial, specifically those who ordered and carried out the Varani genocide. If they comply, Earth will work with this council to establish an international tribunal. The chamber erupted. Representatives from dozens of species started talking at once. The speaker was calling for order, but nobody was listening. Zarn's laughter cut through the noise like a blade. Earth makes demands? You've been in space for less than a century. Your fleet numbers, perhaps 200 ships. The Krell Empire commands over 5,000 capital vessels alone. This is amusing. Patricia waited for the chamber to quiet down. When it did, she continued as if Zarn hadn't spoken. If the Krell do not comply within 72 hours, Earth will take unilateral action to dismantle the Krell military command structure and liberate all occupied territories. Now the chamber went silent. The speaker leaned forward. Ambassador Bloom, surely you're not serious. Earth cannot be considering military action against a galactic power. We're completely serious. This is madness, said the Zypherian representative. You'll be destroyed. Even if other species wanted to help you, which they don't, you cannot win this fight. Patricia smiled, and there was no humor in it. Then you have nothing to worry about. The Krell will crush us quickly, and everything will go back to normal. You can continue your profitable trade relationships and pretend that 800 million dead civilians were just an unfortunate complication in territorial negotiations. Zarn stood again. If Earth is foolish enough to attack Krell holdings, we will respond with overwhelming force. Your homeworld will burn. That sounds like a threat of genocide, Patricia observed. Exactly the kind of behavior the Council should be concerned about, but you won't do anything, will you? She looked around the chamber. Because the Krell are too important. Too powerful, too useful. Ambassador, please, the speaker said. Let us not make this situation worse with inflammatory rhetoric. Earth should reconsider this ultimatum. Work within the proper channels. These matters take time. Time, Patricia repeated. The Varani didn't have time. They had 1 day. But Earth should take years working through your channels while the Krell murder their way across the galaxy? She shook her head. No. 72 hours. The clock is already running. She gathered her materials and turned to leave the speaker's platform. Where are you going? The speaker demanded. This session is not over. Yes, it is, Patricia said. We've said what we came to say. Now you get to decide whether this council actually stands for anything, or if it's just a place where powerful species do whatever they want while everyone else wrings their hands and talks about complexity. She walked toward the exit. Her assistant, a young diplomat named Carl Fisher, fell into step beside her. Ambassador, they're going to try to sanction us, Carl whispered. Cut off trade, isolate Earth diplomatically, let them try. Back on Earth, in a secure bunker beneath the Atlantic Ocean, Admiral Helen Cross stood before a massive holographic display showing ship positions across human space. Every available vessel was being recalled. Production facilities were running triple shifts. Weapons that had been in development were being rushed into field testing. Her second-in-command, Vice Admiral George Palmer, approached with a datapad. Ma'am, we've got final confirmation. Every ship captain has acknowledged their orders. They're ready. How many total? Combined fleet strength of 192 ships, not counting support vessels and transports. Helen studied the display.
192 ships against 5,000.
The analysts had run the numbers 100 different ways. Earth would lose in a straight conventional fight. But nobody said anything about fighting conventionally. What about the special projects? She asked. All operational. The Krell won't know what hit them. Helen nodded slowly. For 50 years, Earth had been the new species in the galaxy. They'd been friendly, cooperative, eager to learn. They'd shared some technology but kept other developments quiet. Let the other species think humans were just another mid-level civilization, nothing special. That had been a deliberate choice. Send the signal, Helen ordered. All fleet elements to proceed to staging areas. Maintain communication silence. Wait for my order. Yes, ma'am. Admiral, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Do you think we can actually pull this off? Helen looked at the display for a long moment. The Krell think we're weak because we talk about peace and cooperation. They think those are signs of weakness. She turned to face him. They're about to learn that the most dangerous humans are the ones who genuinely believe in peace. Because when someone like that decides you need to be stopped, they won't hesitate. They won't hold back. They'll do whatever it takes. 72 hours later, Patricia Bloom stood in the council chamber one last time. The Krell had not surrendered their leadership. Instead, they'd reinforced their border regions and issued proclamations about teaching humanity its place. The council had voted to condemn Earth's ultimatum. They'd suggested mediation, diplomatic talks. Sanctions against both sides if fighting broke out. Patricia listened to it all with a blank expression. When they were done, she spoke 4 words into her communicator. Admiral Cross, you're authorized. Then she walked out of the chamber for the last time. As the doors closed behind her, she said to Carl, Notify all Earth citizens in council space. They have 6 hours to reach designated safe zones. What about our diplomatic missions? Close them. Bring everyone home. The pretense is over. In orbit around 3 different Krell military installations, space suddenly filled with human warships. They'd come in dark, using technology the Krell didn't know existed, arriving in positions that made defense impossible. Admiral Helen Cross sat in her command chair aboard the carrier Independence, watching the tactical display. All ships report ready, her tactical officer announced. Then let's remind the galaxy what humans do to bullies, Helen said quietly. All vessels, weapons free. Begin operations. The first shots of the war lit up the darkness of space. The Krell military station known as Fortress Prime had defended the Empire's northern border for 3 centuries. Its shields could withstand sustained bombardment from 100 ships. Its weapons could destroy entire fleets. The station commander, a veteran of 40 battles, considered it invincible. He had exactly 12 seconds to reconsider that opinion before the human missiles hit. The explosions tore through shield generators that hadn't even had time to fully activate. Secondary detonations ripped through weapons batteries and command centers. Within 2 minutes, Fortress Prime was a burning wreck, its crew evacuating in whatever escape pods still functioned. The station commander survived long enough to send one message to Krell High Command. They didn't give us any warning. They just appeared and fired. How did they get so close? How did they know exactly where to hit? He never received an answer. The communication relay was the next thing the humans destroyed. Similar scenes played out at 2 other major Krell installations. The humans hit hard, hit fast, and hit precisely. They destroyed military targets with surgical accuracy, then vanished before reinforcements could arrive. When Krell battle fleets moved to intercept, they found empty space and sensor ghosts. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session within hours. Ambassador species demanded to know what was happening. The Krell insisted they were mounting a strong defense, but the truth was obvious to anyone watching the tactical reports. Earth was winning. On the ground, things were even worse for the Krell Empire. Human Marines landed on a prison planet called Detention World 7, a place that officially didn't exist on any Krell maps. Commander Lisa Grant led the first assault team through the main gates. What they found there made even hardened soldiers stop and stare. Thousands of beings from dozens of different species were imprisoned in massive compounds. The conditions were horrific. Many prisoners were being used for forced labor. Others were in medical experimentation facilities. Some were simply left in cages to die. Lisa walked through the first compound with her weapon ready, but there were no guards left to fight. They'd fled when the human ships appeared in orbit. The prisoners watched the humans with expressions ranging from hope to fear to complete disbelief. "Get medical teams down here now," Lisa ordered into her communicator. "And bring every transport ship we have. We're taking all of them." Her sergeant, a big man named Paul Morris, approached one of the cages. Inside were 3 small beings that looked almost like children, though they were from a species Lisa didn't recognize.
They cowered in the corner, making small, frightened sounds.
"Hey, it's okay," Paul said softly, kneeling down. "We're here to help. You're safe now." One of the small beings crept forward slowly. It reached through the bars and touched Paul's hand, then looked up at him with large, wet eyes.
"Can you really get us out?" it asked in broken standard galactic language. "Yeah, kid, we're getting you out. All of you."
Paul stood and turned to another Marine. "Someone find the controls for these cages. Break them open if you have to." As the prisoners were freed, many of them began talking. They told stories that made Lisa's blood run cold. The Krell hadn't just imprisoned these beings. They'd been systematically erasing entire species, taking the survivors as slaves or experimental subjects. One elderly alien, a survivor of the species called the Methany, grabbed Lisa's arm with a trembling hand. "You don't understand what you've started," he said. "The Krell will never forgive this. They will hunt humans forever." Lisa looked him in the eye. "Then we'll be ready. But right now, you're coming with us." "Why are you doing this? Earth has nothing to gain from making an enemy of the Krell." "Because it's right," Lisa said simply. "That's reason enough." The Methani stared at her for a long moment, then began to cry. I had forgotten that there were still species who thought that way. Over the next week, human forces struck at 17 different Krell military positions. They freed 5 prison planets and liberated 2 entire conquered worlds. The Krell military, used to fighting weaker opponents who attacked predictably, found themselves unable to counter human tactics. Humans didn't fight fair. They used stealth technology the Krell hadn't known existed. They hacked into Krell communications and fed false information. They struck at supply lines and command centers rather than engaging in traditional fleet battles. Every fight was planned to exploit a weakness or create chaos. On the Krell homeworld, the Supreme Commander gathered his generals for an emergency meeting. The holographic display showed red markers indicating lost positions across a third of their territory. "How is this possible?" the Supreme Commander demanded. "Earth has a fraction of our military strength. Their technology was supposed to be inferior. Our intelligence said they were no threat." One of the generals, an old warrior named Krath, spoke carefully. "Our intelligence was wrong, Supreme One. The humans deliberately let us underestimate them. While they appeared to be peaceful traders and explorers, they were developing advanced weapons in secret. Every diplomatic mission was gathering information. Every trade negotiation was a chance to study our weaknesses. Then we destroy their homeworld. Send the Grand Fleet to Earth and burn it to ash. We've tried, Supreme One. 3 separate battle groups were sent toward Earth space. None of them arrived. The humans intercepted them in deep space and destroyed them. We lost over 300 ships. The Supreme Commander slammed his fist on the table. How? How are they everywhere at once?" Another general pulled up a tactical map. "They're not everywhere. But they know where we're going before we get there. We think they've broken our communication codes. They're reading our orders in real time." "Impossible. Our codes are unbreakable. Apparently not to humans." On a human carrier operating near the Krell border, Intelligence Officer Nicole Parker sat at her console reviewing intercepted communications. The Krell military used complex encryption that most species found impossible to crack, but humans had brought artificial intelligence to the galaxy, sophisticated learning programs that could break codes faster than any biological mind. The Krell hadn't known Earth possessed this capability. They'd never bothered to change their encryption methods because no one had ever broken them before. Now every Krell military message was an open book. Nicole could read their battle plans, their supply schedules, their troop movements. She passed the information to Admiral Cross, who used it to position human forces exactly where they would do the most damage. "Admiral, I'm seeing something interesting," Nicole said, highlighting a section of text. "The Krell Supreme Commander is pulling forces back from their outer territories. They're consolidating around their core worlds." Helen Cross studied the information. "They're going defensive. They've realized they can't beat us in open combat. Should we pursue? No, we've made our point." Helen sat back in her chair. "Send a message to all fleet elements. Cease offensive operations. Maintain defensive positions around the liberated worlds. Ma'am, we could push further. We have them on the run." "That's not why we're here," Helen said firmly. "We came to stop the genocide and free the prisoners." "We've done that. If we invade the Krell homeworld, we become the monsters we're fighting against." The ceasefire shocked both the Krell and the Galactic Council. The humans had won every engagement. They could have pressed their advantage, instead they stopped. On one of the Krell border stations that had survived the initial attacks, a dying Krell general lay in the medical bay. A human medical team had arrived to treat wounded from both sides, another thing that confused the Krell. Humans fought viciously, but they also healed their enemies. The general looked up at the human doctor working on his injuries. "I don't understand you," he rasped. "You're winning. Why stop?" The doctor, a middle-aged woman named Dr. Susan Moore, didn't look up from her work. "Because we don't want your territory. We don't want to rule your people. We just wanted you to stop killing innocents. The council told us you were weak, that your talk of peace and cooperation was a sign of inferior will. We do believe in peace," Susan said, finishing the bandage. "That's exactly why we had to stop you. Peace doesn't mean letting bullies do whatever they want. Sometimes peace requires fighting." The general closed his eyes. "You're the most dangerous enemies we've ever faced. We're not your enemies. We could have been allies." Susan packed up her equipment. "But you chose genocide instead of cooperation. You chose to see compassion as weakness. That was your mistake, not ours." As she walked away, the general whispered to himself, "What have we done?" Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched the news reports. A young species called humanity had challenged one of the most powerful military empires in known space, and won. In the Galactic Council chamber, representatives gathered in small groups, speaking in hushed voices. Everything they thought they knew about Earth had been wrong. The friendly explorers and eager traders had been hiding weapons and capabilities that rivaled the oldest civilizations. The question on everyone's mind was simple. If humans could hide this much from the galaxy, what else were they capable of? And more importantly, would humanity stop with the Krell, or would they decide that other species also needed to be taught a lesson about right and wrong? For the first time in galactic history, the strong looked at the weak and felt afraid. The Galactic Council chamber looked different now. The same representatives sat in the same seats, but the atmosphere had changed completely. Before there had been casual confidence, the relaxed attitude of powers who believed they controlled everything. Now there was tension and uncertainty. Ambassador Patricia Bloom stood at the speaker's platform once again, but this time no one was laughing at her. The council speaker, his voice strained, began the session. "Ambassador Bloom, the council demands that Earth immediately cease all military operations and withdraw from former Krell territories. Your actions have violated numerous galactic laws and treaties." Patricia looked around the chamber calmly. "Earth has ceased defensive operations. Our forces are currently providing humanitarian aid to the liberated populations and maintaining security in regions where Krell authority has collapsed. We're preventing the chaos that might otherwise occur." "You had no authority to attack the Krell Empire," said the Zypherian representative, the same one who had lectured Patricia about complexity weeks earlier. "Regardless of their crimes, unilateral military action cannot be tolerated." "Then perhaps you can explain these documents we found in Krell records. Communications between Krell officials and council members, trade agreements, technology exchanges, evidence that 17 council species knew about the Krell genocide programs and chose to ignore them because the Krell were profitable partners." The chamber erupted in shouting. Representatives denied the accusations, demanded to see the evidence, or tried to shout Patricia down entirely. She waited for the noise to die down, then continued. "We found records of 12 other species that the Krell exterminated over the past century, 12 complete genocides. And every single time, survivors sent distress calls to the Council. Every single time the Council voted to send diplomatic missions and observers. Every single time, nothing was done until the species was extinct." A small, quiet voice spoke from one of the upper tiers. It belonged to a representative from the Planari species, a people known for their dedication to record-keeping. "The human speaks truth. I have the records. I have been documenting these incidents for 40 years, sending reports that were always filed and forgotten." Other representatives shifted uncomfortably. "The council failed," Patricia said simply. "Not because you didn't know what was happening, but because you chose convenience over justice. You chose profit over principle. So yes, Earth acted without your permission, and we'd do it again." "This is unacceptable," the speaker said, but his voice had lost its authority. "There must be consequences for such actions." "Consequences?" Patricia smiled coldly. "Like what? Trade sanctions?" "Most of our trade partners have quietly contacted us this week to ensure their agreements remain intact. They're more interested in Earth's protection than the Council's approval." "Diplomatic isolation?" "We've received embassy requests from 40 species in the past 2 weeks." "Military action?" "I don't think anyone in this chamber wants to test human military capabilities after what we did to the Krell." The truth of her words hung in the air. Then Patricia's tone softened slightly. But Earth doesn't want to be your enemy. We never did. We're here to offer continued cooperation, but with conditions. Earth makes demands of the Council now, the speaker asked bitterly. We're proposing reforms. Create an actual peacekeeping force with authority to intervene in genocides. Establish real tribunals for war crimes with enforcement power. Make the Council more than just a debate society where the strong do whatever they want. And if we refuse, then Earth will continue to act independently when we see atrocities being committed. We'll protect species that can't protect themselves. We'll stop genocides whether you approve or not. Patricia paused. But wouldn't it be better if we worked together? If the Council actually stood for the principles it claims to represent. Before anyone could respond, a new message appeared on Patricia's datapad. She read it quickly, and her expression hardened. I need to address something else, she said. In the past hour, Earth has received formal requests from the governments of 18 different species. They're asking for protection treaties. They want Earth to guarantee their security because they no longer trust the Council to defend them. The chamber went silent. We're considering these requests, Patricia continued. Some will accept. Others will decline, but the fact that sovereign governments are asking a species that's been in space for less than a century to protect them instead of relying on this council should tell you how badly you've failed. She gathered her materials. Earth will submit a formal proposal for council reform within 30 days. I suggest you give it serious consideration, because the galaxy is changing, whether you like it or not. On Earth, President Michelle Gardner sat in her office preparing for the most important address of her career. Her advisors had argued for hours about what she should say. Some wanted her to be diplomatic, to reassure the galaxy that Earth meant no harm. Others wanted her to be aggressive, to press Earth's advantage while they had it. Michelle had listened to all of them, then written her own speech. The cameras went live. Her image would be broadcast to billions of beings across thousands of worlds. She looked directly into the camera and began. My name is Michelle Gardner, and I'm the president of the United Earth Government. Many of you know what happened with the Krell Empire. Today I want to explain why it happened and what it means for the future. She pulled up images behind her. The burned Virani cities. The prison planets. The freed captives. 3 months ago we discovered that the Krell Empire had committed genocide against the Virani people. 800 million civilians were murdered. When we brought this evidence to the Galactic Council, we were told that intervention was complicated, that we needed to consider the larger political situation, that these things take time. Michelle's voice grew harder. While the council debated, the Krell were operating prison planets where beings from dozens of species were being tortured, experimented on, and worked to death. Children were in those prisons, families were separated and destroyed, and everyone knew. The council knew. Major galactic powers knew. They chose to do nothing because stopping genocide was inconvenient. She leaned forward. Earth chose differently. We stopped the genocide. We freed the prisoners. We dismantled the Krell military structure that allowed these atrocities to happen. And yes, we did it without permission. We broke your rules. Behind her, new images appeared. The freed prisoners. Medical teams treating the wounded. Human soldiers helping rebuild destroyed communities. We're not apologizing for that. When we saw innocent beings being murdered, we acted. That's what civilization means to us. Not political complexity. Not economic considerations. Civilization means protecting those who can't protect themselves. Michelle paused, letting her words sink in. Some of you are afraid of Earth now. You're wondering what we'll do next, if we use our military power to dominate others the way the Krell did. Let me be clear about something. We don't want your territory. We don't want to rule over you. We don't want an empire. What we want is simple. We want a galaxy where genocide is actually punished, not debated. Where the strong protect the weak instead of exploiting them. Where the Galactic Council means something more than a place for powerful species to justify their actions. New data scrolled across screens. Since the Krell conflict ended, we've been contacted by representatives from over 100 species. Some want military alliances. Some want trade agreements. Some just want to talk. To all of them, we say this. Earth is ready to be your partner, but we won't be your weapon. We'll help defend against aggression, but we won't fight your wars of conquest. We'll share technology and resources, but not at the cost of our principles. Michelle's expression softened slightly. I know many of you are wondering about the Krell themselves. Their empire has collapsed. Their military is shattered. What happens to them now?
Earth proposes an international administration to help transition former Krell territories. We'll provide security and humanitarian aid, but the future of these regions should be decided by their inhabitants, not by Earth. She stood up from her desk and walked closer to the camera. The galaxy stands at a crossroads. You can continue with business as usual, where might makes right and the strong prey on the weak. Or you can join Earth in building something better, a real galactic community based on justice and mutual protection. We know this won't be easy. We know there will be resistance from those who benefit from the current system. But we also know we're not alone. Every species that's ever been threatened by a stronger neighbor, every civilization that's ever begged the Council for help that never came, every being who's ever wondered why the galaxy allows atrocities to happen is watching right now, and they're hoping for change. Michelle looked directly into the camera. To those beings, we say this: Earth stands with you. Not as your rulers, but as your allies. Together we can build a galaxy where genocide becomes truly unthinkable, where justice is more than just a word in council speeches. And to those who would continue the cycle of violence and oppression, we say this: the galaxy is watching now. The rules have changed. Genocide will have consequences. Real consequences. She sat back down. Earth remains open to cooperation and dialogue, but we will never again stand by while innocent beings are slaughtered. That's not a threat. It's a promise. The broadcast ended. Within hours, the response flooded in. Some governments praised Earth's stand. Others condemned it as dangerous imperialism. Smaller species sent messages of gratitude. Larger powers issued warnings about respecting sovereignty. But underneath all the official responses, something fundamental had shifted in galactic politics. For the first time in anyone's memory, the victims had a champion. The weak had a defender who wasn't afraid to stand up to the strong. The galaxy would never be the same. 3 months had passed since Earth's military operations ended. Captain Daniel Pierce stood on the surface of the Varani homeworld, watching construction crews work on rebuilding the capital city. The scorched earth had been cleared away. New buildings were rising from the foundations of the old ones, and for the first time since the genocide, there were Varani children playing in the streets. Not many children, only a few hundred had been found in hidden bundles in underground shelters after the initial rescue. But they were alive, and they were laughing, and that was something. Morning Song, one of the 3 survivors Daniel had rescued months ago, walked up beside him. The elderly Varani looked healthier now, though his eyes still carried deep sadness. Your people have done remarkable work, Morning Song said quietly. The city looks almost like I remember it. Almost isn't the same as what you lost, Daniel replied. I'm sorry we couldn't save more. You saved who you could, and you made sure the galaxy will remember what happened here. Morning Song gestured to a massive memorial being constructed at the city center. That matters more than you might think. The memorial was a simple design. 800 million names, carved in stone, arranged in a spiral that visitors could walk through. At the center was a reflection pool and an eternal flame. The Varani had insisted on building it themselves, refusing offers of automated construction. We need to do this with our own hands, Morning Song had explained. We need to remember every name, even if it takes years. A human aid worker approached them. Captain Pierce, there's a school visit scheduled. The children wanted to meet you. Daniel nodded and followed the worker to a newly constructed school building. Inside, about 30 Varani children sat in a classroom, looking up at him with wide, curious eyes. They ranged in age from very young to teenagers. All of them were orphans. Their teacher, a Varani woman named Gentle Rain, smiled at Daniel. Children, this is Captain Pierce. He was one of the first humans to come help us. A small Varani girl raised her hand. Are you a soldier? I was, Daniel said, kneeling down to be at their level. Now I'm more of a helper. My teacher says you fought the bad people who hurt us, another child said. Daniel chose his words carefully. Yes, we stopped them from hurting anyone else. Older boy, perhaps 13 in human years, spoke up. His voice was serious beyond his age. Will they come back?
The Krell?
No, Daniel said firmly. They won't. The Krell military doesn't exist anymore, and even if someone tried to rebuild it, there are a lot of people watching now. You're not alone anymore. The small girl who had spoken first stood up and walked over to Daniel. She reached out and touched his hand, just like the child had done on Detention World 7. Will you protect us if someone bad comes again? She asked. Daniel felt his throat tighten. He thought about making promises he might not be able to keep. But then he looked at those hopeful eyes and knew he had to tell the truth. "We'll teach you to protect yourselves," he said. "We'll help you build defenses and train security forces. But yes, if you need us, we'll be there. Earth doesn't abandon its friends." The girl smiled and hugged him. Several other children came over to do the same. Daniel held them carefully, these fragile survivors of an unthinkable tragedy, and silently renewed his promise to himself that this would never happen again. On Earth, in the rebuilt Galactic Council embassy, Ambassador Patricia Bloom met with a steady stream of visitors. The embassy had been closed for a month during the conflict, but now it was busier than ever. Today's visitor was an ambassador from the Kelthani Union, a mid-sized alliance of peaceful species. Ambassador Torin was a tall, thin being with silver skin and 4 arms. "Ambassador Bloom, my government wishes to formally request a mutual defense treaty with Earth," Torin said, presenting a data crystal containing the proposal. Patricia accepted it. "We'll review this carefully, but I need to be honest with you. Earth isn't looking to build a military empire. We're not hiring ourselves out as mercenaries. We understand. But we've been threatened by our neighbors, the Sarkath, for 20 years. We've asked the Council for help repeatedly. They tell us to negotiate. Meanwhile, the Sarkath take more of our territory each year." Torin's voice was desperate. "We don't want war. We want what you gave the Virani. We want someone to say that destroying peaceful species is wrong." Patricia studied him for a long moment. "If we sign this treaty, it comes with conditions. You can't use our protection as an excuse to be aggressive toward others. You have to commit to the same principles Earth stands for: justice, protection of civilians, peaceful resolution when possible. We accept those conditions gladly. Then we'll present this to our government. I think they'll approve it." After Torin left, Patricia's assistant Carl entered with another stack of requests. "Ma'am, we've got 14 more treaty proposals, 9 requests for military training assistance, and 3 applications from species wanting to join Earth as client states." "Client states? Tell those 3 we don't do client states. We're not building an empire." I tried explaining that. "They said they'd rather be Earth's clients than remain vulnerable to their neighbors." Patricia sighed. "The galaxy spent thousands of years building a system where the strong dominate the weak. Now everyone expects us to replace the Krell as the new dominant power. They don't understand that we're trying to change the system itself. Are we succeeding? Ask me in 100 years." Patricia looked at the stack of requests. But at least they're asking for help instead of just accepting that genocide is normal. That's progress. On the former Krell homeworld, now under international administration, a remarkable transformation was taking place. The Krell government had collapsed completely after the military defeat. What remained was a civilian population that had lived under military dictatorship for so long they barely knew how to function without it. Commander Lisa Grant had been assigned to help with the transition. She walked through the capital city, where Krell civilians went about their daily lives under the watchful eyes of human peacekeepers and representatives from a dozen other species. A Krell civilian approached her cautiously. His name was Veth, and he had been a teacher before the Empire collapsed. "Commander Grant, may I speak with you?" "Of course. I want to understand something. Why didn't you destroy us?" "You had the power. You defeated our military completely. Why let us survive?" Lisa stopped walking and turned to face him. "Because we're not like your old government. We didn't fight the Krell people. We fought the Krell military leadership that ordered genocides. There's a difference. But we supported them. We believed the propaganda."
"We thought other species were inferior. A lot of you did, yes."
"But that doesn't mean you deserve extinction." Lisa gestured to the city around them. "You have a chance now to build something different. A government that doesn't need to conquer others to feel strong. A society that trades and cooperates instead of threatening and destroying. Will humans stay to help us? For a while, until you're stable. Then you'll be on your own, same as everyone else." Veth looked uncertain. "What if we fail? What if we become dangerous again?" "Then we'll stop you again," Lisa said simply. "But this time, you know we're watching. Every species in the galaxy knows Earth is watching. That should help you make better choices." In space above the liberated territories, Admiral Helen Cross reviewed reports from her fleet commanders. The military operation was over, but the peacekeeping mission would continue for years. Her communication officer, Lieutenant Frank Stone, brought her a message. "Admiral, it's from Earth Command. They're recalling half the fleet. The Secretary of Defense says we need to maintain defensive readiness at home." Helen nodded. "We can't keep the entire fleet deployed out here indefinitely, but make sure the ships we leave behind are enough to handle any threats." "Yes, ma'am. Also, you have a personal message from the Methani Elder, the one Commander Grant rescued from the prison planet." Helen opened the message. It was a simple video of the elderly alien standing in what looked like a rebuilt community. Behind him were dozens of other Mathani, including children. "Admiral Cross," the elder said in the recording. "I wanted you to see this. These are my people. We thought we were extinct. The Krell told us we were the last ones. But your people found other survivors on different prison worlds. There are almost 3,000 of us now. Enough to continue our species." The elder's voice broke slightly. "I spent 40 years in that prison. I watched my children die. I thought my entire civilization would end with me. But because of what Earth did, because you refused to accept that genocide was just politics, my grandchildren will grow up free. I cannot repay this debt." "None of us can, but we will remember. And we will tell our children, and they will tell theirs, that when the galaxy had forgotten what justice meant, the humans remembered." The message ended. Helen sat quietly for a moment, then forwarded it to every ship in the fleet with a simple note. "This is why we're here. This is what we're protecting. Stay strong." Back on the Varani homeworld, the sun was setting. Daniel Pierce walked through the memorial construction site one last time before returning to his ship. Workers were carefully carving names into the stone. Thousands of names, working by the light of portable lamps as darkness fell. He found Morning Song sitting near the reflection pool, looking at the eternal flame. "I come here every evening," the old Varani said, "to remember." Daniel sat down beside him. "You don't have to do this alone. There are counselors, support groups. I know, I attend them. But I also need this. Need to sit with the memory of what was lost." Morning Song looked at Daniel. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course. I hated you at first. When you rescued us. I thought, where were you when the bombs were falling? Where was Earth when my children were dying?" Morning Song smiled sadly. "But that was unfair. You came as soon as you knew. You did what the Council should have done decades ago. We should have known sooner. We should have been paying attention. Perhaps. But you're paying attention now, and that changes everything." Morning Song gestured to the memorial. "This isn't just for the Varani. It's for every species that was erased while the galaxy looked away. That their deaths mattered. That someone cared enough to say never again, and actually mean it." Daniel stood up. "We mean it. I promise you that. I believe you, and so does the rest of the galaxy, whether they admit it or not." Morning Song looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "You've changed the rules, Captain Pierce. The strong can no longer prey on the weak without consequences. That's a gift more valuable than any technology or resources. You've given the galaxy back its conscience." As Daniel walked back to his shuttle, he thought about those words. Earth hadn't set out to change the galaxy. They just refused to accept that genocide was acceptable. But sometimes that was all it took. Sometimes the most revolutionary act was simply insisting that right and wrong still mattered. The galaxy was still learning to adjust to that idea. But they were learning, and Earth would be there to make sure they didn't forget the lesson.